Greetings, everybody. This is Courtney StarHeart, and I'm here today with a really exceptional individual who is filling the gaps between what we all know needs to happen and the mechanics of how it's going to happen. Right now, the world is in crisis, and whether you're a liberal or a conservative, we all know that these power structures are coming down. We're all very nervous about it, and I haven't heard but one person speak in the way that I think is authentic and legitimate until I met this gentleman. So, would you please introduce yourself to the following? I'd love to hear you speak about yourself.
Oh, that's a very difficult way to introduce me, but very happy to be with you. And excuse me sitting in my vehicle. I'm heading to Pennsylvania in the middle of a cross-country tour in the United States. My story is backstory is a war child in the Zimbabwean war, the Rhodesian War for independence of Zimbabwe, which saw me as for the first 15 years of my life really ducking behind grenade screens, and then the next 9 years of my life living as a refugee in the United Kingdom, but with refugee status. And I segued into rock and roll and became really what I describe more as a shock poet and rock musician for a time. It was a long, long time ago. And in 1999, walked away from the entertainment industry for reasons which are now becoming very apparent to anyone who observes the Puff Daddy trial underway, which is the first of many trials of leading icons over the last 25, 30 years in the music business. It goes back to Nashville, Hollywood. It's very dark, it's very ugly, but it's stuff that I saw when I was very young in the late 90s. So I segued away from music and entertainments and set up my peace foundation, Humanitad, in 1999, and spent years doing what you would loosely call citizen diplomacy. Um, and for about 5 years, traveled the world meeting with political, religious, cultural leaders, principally setting up the base for my Peace Foundation. Have set up in the intervening years since then, have set up multiple organizations, campaigns, and initiatives, all of which variously seek to resurrect the living men and women of the living soil from the fiction of wage slavery, indentureship to corporations masquerading as governments, which is what the status quo can be defined as, a kind of false light matrix where we're all born into servitude and enslavement and bond our children by, registering them at birth and handing them over to the state, and then wonder why the CPS has the rights to come and snatch our babies and so on, because we are entering the contract at every step of the way. So I've spent many years working against the grain of how humanity have been indentured, securitized, corporatized. I've been variously a director general in the United Nations intergovernmental sector, produced the Millennium Development Goal Awards ceremonies on the floor of the General Assembly in New York many years ago, held a preeminent position intergovernmentally in renewable energy and breakthrough innovation. And I stepped away from that particular shit show, excuse my language, but it is a shit show,
It really is.
United Nations and the kind of globalist multilateral playing field, an entirely rigged playing field, which I'm an expert at. And I stepped away from that and then set up the New Earth project in 2012, 2013, which corresponded with the end of the long Count Sulcan of the Mayans. And for anyone who's up on their real understanding of archaeohistory, 2012 was a seminal dateline. So since 2013, I've been stewarding with many, many hundreds and hundreds of people, the New Earth Project, the New Earth Movement. So we've now got to a point where we've established a kind of, I would say, a Vatican type complex status, lawfully speaking, where we are an ecclesiastically protected diocese, a multiple irrevocable universal trusts nested in to become something called the New Earth Coalition. And we have land holdings around the world. We have initiatives around the world. We have many organizations, the New Earth Pharmacy, New Earth Technologies, New Earth Sanctuaries, Havens, and so on. So essentially, New Earth is a blueprint, an emerging, evolving blueprint or template which extends a knowledge transfer and technology transfer to people of the world. Certainly later next year will be the year where we really come out in a big way, because we're in the process of politically or diplomatically establishing a full New Earth nation. I'll speak to some extent on that if you wish, but the nation, once it is born, uh, will be the first nation born as by multilateral treaty, acknowledged on the world stage, as the first nation born as through an act of peace, not acts of war. So that in itself becomes a kind of line in the sand, that demarcates the departure from the Atlantean model, the pyramidal model of dominion, supremacy, aggregating wealth and power, and then suppressing, and worse, harvesting and sacrificing the innocents. So that line in the sand is what my last purpose has been, um, really directed toward: establishing, manifesting, embodying that line in the sand. Again, as an act of peace, not as an act of war. So although I'm a frontline activist now, technically speaking, and in that sense, a fully certified shit stirrer on the political in the political domain, but more importantly, I'm feet in the mud, in the trenches, where we are pioneering this new earth. You and I, all of those, most of your audience, I dare say, are also that ilk of humans who have made the determination that we will now take the dreaming forward. Our wise dreaming will determine the outcomes and the future. So that's where we find ourselves, on the precipice of a new earth horizon, which beckons us and invites us to step fully into our sovereign status, sovereign standing as children of God under direct central sun where we cast no shadow. And that, for me, is why the hereditary redemption piece, and working with hereditary leaders and elders all around the world and restoring the ancient hereditary kingdoms and queendoms as a necessary step toward our emancipation, not forgetting that for 500 years, the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin people of the world have been conquested and harvested through the Vatican doctrines of discovery, the dominion of the imperial crowns of Europe, which became the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, the Anglo-American Corporation, Wall Street, Bank of International Settlements, United Nations. I've just given you a quick whistle stop of how we moved from an age of innocence through the Caesars of Rome 2,000 years ago, and to this globalist hegemony now, which good humans will categorically dismiss in the coming 5 to 7 years. In my view, that game is all over.
Wow. That was absolutely the most remarkable and precise rendition of the past through 2,000 years that I've really ever heard outside of Indigenous circles. But oftentimes in our Indigenous circles, we don't have the exposure to the UN and the mechanisms. As we speak, my mentor, Patricio Dominguez, is with Adam Yellowbird all over South America, making intertribal connections and forming an NGO to protect those tribal peoples and enlisting them. This has been our entire life purpose. So I studied international relations at American University, and I saw those systems. I studied finance and trade so that I could understand exactly how it works. So, I would encourage everyone who's listening to sit with this for a moment. If you feel uncomfortable in the world today, what this gentleman is saying is the reason why you feel uncomfortable. Whether you're wealthy or you're poor, whether you're liberal or conservative, it affects all of us. It's folly to think that we can go to another country and kill those people, or that we can otherize someone and steal their resources and then be okay ourselves. We all live on one mother and we all live under one sky, and we need to start behaving as such. But as I understand it, from the Maya technology that my mentor granted me, of course, the Tsukine hit an end to the long count in 2012 on the solstice. So moving forward now, they tell us that we're in this period of transition. whereby we have somewhere between 50 to 500 years that there's a window of opportunity before the new age, which isn't really very new agey in a woo-woo way. This is literally astronomy. This is literally a very advanced civilization that could predict lunar eclipses, that knew of the existence of Pluto. The Maya calendric system is fabulous. So what they don't agree on is how many years we have, but I would like to think 50. We have 50 years between now and the Satya Yuga, this golden era of a new energy coming in. We're seeing the solar flares. We're seeing the things that are happening, the mechanisms on our planet that are literally changing things. So we're seeing people kind of go bonkers who don't have the ability to hold that light or accept that a new paradigm is emerging. What would you recommend to those people, all of them, who feel uncomfortable right now, so that you could make their life a little bit easier?
In the first instance, I would suggest that you gave a great summary there of the Kali Yuga as it folds or weaves into the Satya, the great new golden era. I would suggest that time is now moot and defunct. In point of fact, it was the 16th of August, 1987. I think I'm correct in
It
saying it was
was.
16th. Yeah, 16th of
The sun
August.
began to change.
Well, that was the harmonic convergence,
Yes.
which was catalyzed really by Jose Arguelles, who was one of my mentors and imparted to me the law of time before he died in 2011. But Jose Arguelles was the reincarnation of the last of the great Mayan priests who was born in the 1930s and the 70s. He decoded the long count Solkan of the Mayans and was recognized as playing that pivotal role. Having decoded the long count Solkan of the Mayans in the 1970s, it became the biggest meme in history, 2012. And
Yeah.
of course, he passed in 2011, before 2012. And 2012 demarcated the end of time. Technically, it was when the hammer dropped, but there was an 8-year period leading up to the 21st of December 2020, which interestingly, and that's technically when time ended. And that was the year of lockdown, curiously enough, when the whole of humanity, for whatever reasons of collusion and conspiracy, we found ourselves all forced into quietude. So that was an interesting play, how these dynamics and archetypal forces work, but we were all forced to be present, to be still, even though it was a satanic agenda by best account that was forcing us into that sequestration. Nonetheless, we did quieten the gestalt, the zeitgeist, and each of us were forced by that token into some kind of a reckoning. So to now answer the question that you raised, how to best guide people as we now navigate through the end of the galactic sleep, so to speak, into the galactic day. It is a process of alchemy, of transmutation and transcendence that each one of us individually are called upon to alchemize within our own standing as children of God. So that is a reckoning that I cannot answer to or proselytize to the individual, because each of us know the secrets of our heart. Each of us know our standing and the central sun. Each of us know the shade that and the contrast that we carry, whether we are moral sufficiently to admit that to ourselves or to one another is another matter. But the fact of the matter is that each of us we are carrying Solomon's judgment within the atom seed of our heart, our mind, our soul. So each individual needs to use this time, this end of time, this kind of flux at the end of time,
Right.
this echo at this last, echo in the shadow of time. We now need to use this for a true reckoning with self, with the Atman, with the witness, and become the living witness, become the living testament. So this to me is also where the great mysteries and certainly the more esoteric traditions of Christianity going back to the Essenes and the Judaic peoples, going back to the genesis point of the mystical traditions of the Jewish, great Jewish faith, and the same with the great Islamic faith, with the kind of Sufic traditions, which were all
Absolutely.
about transmutation and transcendence. They were never about hold a dialectic and burn the babies and burn the libraries and be on the front crusades and pogroms. No, that was a bad dreaming dreamt up by
The
priest
elites.
bankers.
Yeah.
Priest bankers are politicians, and politicians existed 2,000 years ago. They were called the Caesars of Rome and the Senate. Same old, same old. But when it comes down to human beings, individuals, each one of us has got the right to be able to transmute and transcend the status quo into a higher octave of expression and become bodhisattva, become enlightened beings, where the rest of our framing in this world in the course of our lifetimes is literally a benediction to this world. And we carry those codes, so to speak. We carry that God force, that life force, and we radiate it laterally into the field in our being and our doing. That's grace. That's the ascension process kicking in at the individual fractal level. And those blessed brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, and children who are able to return to innocence in the expression of their life, they will each see this dawn. They will move into this ascension event, because it's literally a dialing out of the third density temporal plane of entropy, disease, separation, and death. It's a dialing out of that into the immanent blueprint, the patterns of perfection, which self-exist, self-reveal, and self-fulfill all the time and beyond time itself. So sorry to sound enigmatic in the answer, but it is an enigmatic answer because I'm trying to describe in normal words the principle of transmutation and transcendence. So that's the individual. At the collective level, how do we alchemize our culture, our civilizational wheel into a higher octave of expression? Well, we don't need to worry about that. We simply need to focus on the individual, on ourselves, and our own relationship with self. And that can be achieved and accomplished. The highest expression of self can be accomplished in the simplest possible terms by enacting pure truth and right action in the living moment. The living moment means to be actualized and taking full account and responsibility as a child of God in the temporal realm. So pure truth, right action, the living moment is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always in all ways. And in that breath, that sentence, I just described all of the mysteries of ages and all of the mystical traditions.
100%. As a student of all of that, which you just said, it was so eloquent. And let me dial this in for the audience in case you haven't studied all these esoteric traditions. Let me say, all of them point to one thing, and this is pivotal, which is our connection. When we drop into the heart field, when we use whatever systems to drop into that field, we can connect with a larger field that I call the force. But as this gentleman just said, it's not a process that you do once. It's a living thing of constantly being in right action, in right consciousness in every moment. That's why I call it finding the force, because you don't find it, you're constantly finding it. So that awareness is something that you can achieve through daily practice. I think sometimes you can achieve it through being in a group of like-minded people because we elevate each other's consciousness, but you will be led synchronistically by the hand of God, as it were, to find the people, the places, and the things that you need to do when you're in alignment. So we're going to leave this particular interview right here. I want to let you know that on May 31st at 2277 3rd Street in New York, you will find an amazing event listed below, okay, in the subtitles of this Substack and on YouTube. I would love for you to join us. Would you just tell us briefly what the event in New York will be like?
Sure, it's a free event. Number one, I don't charge ever charge for my speaking, and I tour every year constantly. I'm touring Europe, I'm touring the Middle East and the Mediterranean this year, and the United States. I've crossed the whole of the U.S. Pretty much in the next 2 weeks. I will have crossed the United States. Look, this tour is called the Revelations Tour, and what I'm doing is speaking to private audience because things I'm saying are shocking, things I'm saying are very revelatory. I've have a tremendous amount of experience, and I'm able to show through my multimedia presentation photographs and images that underscore what it is that I'm revealing. So it's pretty shock and awe in a good way, because what it's doing is seeking to shake the tree and allow for the old calcified intellectual the more entropic and dead elements in our thought forms, our cultural thought forms, need to be shaken out now. It has to happen now. This is the year of atonement. This is the year of bifurcation and atonement. We have got to do that housekeeping, that house cleaning, that street sweeping internally. So this tour is really an attempt to help to frame some of the bigger narratives, historically, in fact, even going back to the galactic stories of galactic genesis point, the cosmogenetics of humanity, bringing it all the way through to the status quo, correcting history along the way, bringing it to the status quo and the era of covidiacy and beyond, which is where we are now, and the mechanics of ascension, so to speak, of how we, really speaking to your language, how we now, clad in nothing but the wisdom of insecurity and the armor of God, move into this bold new earth horizon and begin to finally pay heed to the message of ages that's been promulgated by the Aboriginal and First Nation peoples for thousands of years, whilst we weren't listening because we were too busy playing with fire, when they were urging us to begin wise dreaming. Now is the time for that collective wise dreaming to begin. So that essentially is what I'm speaking to, the mechanics of how we do that. It's a 3-hour multimedia presentation, and I'm greatly looking forward to it. It's the first time I'm returning to New York since I exited the United Nations, I think 16 odd years ago.
Well, welcome back. You always have a home here. We have a sanctuary and lots of beautiful people who are super excited to meet you. So I will end this particular podcast here, but know that there'll be a second episode where we get to meet Sacha Stone as a man, as a human being, as a son or a brother, him as a real human being. And sometimes that's everyone's favorite part. Bye for now.